You've been meaning to change something for a while now. Not everything, just something. Maybe it's waking up a bit earlier. Maybe it's drinking more water. Maybe it's finally using that planner you bought 3 months ago. You know what it is, and you've probably started before, more than once. It worked for a few days, then it didn't, and now you're here again, thinking about it, wondering why it feels so hard to just keep going. It's not that you don't want it. You do. It's just that wanting something and actually building it into your life are two very different things. And somewhere between the intention and the follow-through, things fall apart. You forget. You get tired, something comes up, and the habit you were trying to build just fades. And that's where you are now. Not failing, not stuck, just aware that something needs to shift and you're not entirely sure how to make it last this time. Most people are trying to change something about their routines right now. Not because they're broken, but because life keeps moving, and what worked 6 months ago doesn't quite fit anymore. Adults are busy. They have jobs, responsibilities, people depending on them. They wake up with things already on their mind. They go to bed with things still undone. And in between all of that, they're supposed to somehow find the space to build new habits, improve themselves, become more consistent. It sounds simple when you read about it, but in practice, it's messy. Because habits don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in the middle of your actual life, with all its noise and unpredictability. Someone gets sick. A deadline moves up. You sleep poorly for 3 nights in a row, and suddenly that habit you were building feels impossible to maintain. So you stop. Not because you gave up, but because it just didn't fit. And that's the part most people don't talk about. Habits aren't just about willpower or discipline. They're about design. They're about making space for something new in a life that's already full. And when that space doesn't exist, the habit doesn't survive. It's not a moral failure, it's just structure, or the lack of it. I used to think habits were about deciding to do something and then doing it. And for a while, I forced that approach. I'd pick a habit, commit to it fully, and then wonder why I couldn't keep it going past the first week. I thought the problem was me, my discipline, my focus, my ability to follow through. But the real problem was that I was trying to install a new behavior into a life that hadn't made room for it yet. I was adding, not replacing. I was stacking, not integrating. And eventually, the stack would collapse, because it wasn't built on anything solid. It took me a long time to realize that building a habit isn't about forcing yourself to do something every day. It's about creating conditions where that thing becomes easier to do than not do. It's about removing friction, not increasing effort. And that shift in perspective changed everything. Because once I stopped trying to be more disciplined and started trying to be more intentional about structure, habits stopped feeling like battles. They started feeling like pathways. And pathways, once built, don't require convincing. You just walk them. The core idea here is simple, but it's not obvious until you see it clearly. Habits don't fail because you lack discipline. They fail because they're fragile. They're competing with everything else in your life, and unless you build them in a way that accounts for that competition, they won't last. You can't rely on motivation. Motivation is inconsistent. You can't rely on willpower. Willpower is a limited resource. What you can rely on is structure. And structure means designing your environment, your schedule, and your decisions in a way that makes the habit inevitable. Not easy, not effortless, but inevitable. That's the difference. When a habit is well designed, it doesn't feel like you're choosing it every day. It feels like it's already part of the system. And that's when it sticks. So the question isn't, how do I get myself to do this? The question is, how do I make this the default option? Because once something becomes the default, you stop having to decide. You just do it. And that's where consistency lives. Not in motivation, not in inspiration, in design. Think about your mornings. Let's say you want to start drinking water as soon as you wake up. Simple habit. objectively good for you. But if the water isn't already there, if you have to walk to the kitchen, find a glass, fill it, and then remember why you're doing this before you've even had coffee, it's not going to happen. Not consistently. But if you put a glass of water on your nightstand before you go to bed, and it's the first thing you see when you wake up, the friction drops. You don't have to decide. You don't have to remember. You just reach for it. That's structure. Now, let's say you want to read more. You know you should. You like the idea of it. But at night, after everything's done, you're tired. Your phone is right there. The book is somewhere, on a shelf, in another room, maybe still in your bag, so you scroll instead. Not because you prefer it, but because it's easier. But if you put the book on your pillow every morning when you make your bed, and you put your phone in another room before you sit down at night, the default shifts. The path of least resistance changes, and suddenly, reading doesn't require discipline. It just requires less effort than the alternative. That's how habits survive. Not by forcing them into your life, but by designing your life so they fit naturally into the flow of what you're already doing. Here's what that looks like in real time. You're trying to build the habit of going to the gym in the morning. You set your alarm. You mean it. But when the alarm goes off, you're tired. The bed is warm. The gym is cold. And the decision you have to make in that moment is too big. So you hit snooze. But what if you slept in your workout clothes? What if your shoes were by the door? What if your water bottle was already filled and in the fridge? What if you told yourself you only had to go for 10 minutes, and if you still wanted to leave after that, you could? Now the decision isn't, do I go to the gym or stay in bed? The decision is, do I put my shoes on? And that's a much smaller decision. Small decisions stack. They build momentum. And momentum is what carries you through the first few weeks, when the habit is still fragile, still forming, still easy to drop. Another example. You want to cook more at home. You're tired of eating out. But when you get home, you're exhausted. You don't want to think. You don't want to prep. You don't want to clean. So you order something. Again. But what if you prepped your ingredients on Sunday? What if you had a simple recipe taped to the fridge? What if you started with just one meal a week and built from there? Now, cooking isn't this overwhelming thing. It's just the next step. And the next step is always easier than the whole staircase. This is where most people get it wrong. They try to build the perfect version of the habit from day one. They want to meditate for 30 minutes, work out 6 days a week, write 1,000 words every morning. And when they can't sustain that, they think they failed. But they didn't fail. They just started too big. Because habits aren't built on intensity. They're built on repetition. And repetition requires simplicity. If the habit is too complicated, too demanding, too dependent on ideal conditions, it won't survive contact with real life. But if you make it small, stupidly small, almost laughably small, it has a chance. Because small things repeat, and repetition builds identity. And identity is what makes a habit permanent. You don't go to the gym because you're disciplined. You go because you're someone who goes to the gym. You don't write every day because you're motivated. You write because you're someone who writes. And you become that person through repetition. Not perfection. Repetition. I'm not saying this to give you another method. I'm saying this because the way we think about habits is backwards. We think we need to change ourselves first, and then the habit will follow. But it's the opposite. The habit changes you. The action comes first. The identity follows. And if you can just show up, even badly, even inconsistently at first, the identity starts to form. And once the identity forms, the habit becomes automatic. Because you're not doing it to become someone. You're doing it because you already are. That shift is everything. And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, over weeks, over months. But it does happen, as long as you keep the system simple enough to survive the days when you don't feel like it. Because those days will come, And if the habit is too rigid, too perfect, too dependent on ideal conditions, it won't make it through. But if it's flexible, if it's small, if it's designed to survive mess and fatigue and interruption, it will. And that's what we're building here. Not motivation, not perfection. Survival. So if you're here because you want to build better habits, not because you need a speech or a push, but because you want something that actually works, then this is the space for that. I talk about this stuff regularly, not in a hype way, not in a transform your life in 30 days way, but in a way that's practical, clear, and built for people who are already busy and don't need another thing to feel guilty about. If that sounds useful, you'll probably find value in coming back. Not because I'm going to give you the secret, but because I'm going to keep organizing the thinking around this in a way that makes it easier to apply. And over time, that clarity compounds. Just like the habits themselves. You don't need to fix everything at once. You don't need to overhaul your entire routine tonight. You just need to pick one thing, one small thing, and make it so easy that even on your worst day, you could still do it. Because the goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to not break the chain. And the chain doesn't have to be impressive. It just has to exist. That's what builds momentum. That's what builds identity. And that's what makes the habit last. Long after the motivation fades, long after the excitement wears off, long after you stop thinking about it consciously at all. Because by then, it's just part of what you do. And that's the point. Not to try harder, but to build smarter. Not to force it, but to design it. And once it's designed well, it runs on its own. Quietly, consistently, without you having to fight for it every single day. That's the kind of change that lasts. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that just becomes you. Over time.